So God has like moved you to a lot of places, a lot of exciting places. Is there like one major thing that's happened in your life that God has moved you to?
Yeah. And going back to what you just said, Matt, about kind of recognizing yourself, I think that's another way of knowing that God is speaking. And this example I'm about to share was more, it was almost audible to me. I felt God speaking. I was living in Florida. I grew up in Michigan, but I lived in Florida for 5 years. And that's where God really worked on my heart. And that's also where I lived when I was traveling. And so I was single, living alone. And one of my sisters who lived in Michigan was about to move to Knoxville, Tennessee with her husband. And she was not thrilled about the move, really didn't want to leave the rest of my family and her friends. But it was something they had to make the move. And so I had this remote job and I said, I can come visit you anytime. I can work from your house. It'll be fine. I'm here for you. And so I, was praying for her. I was praying with her. And one night I remember I was folding my laundry and praying for her, and it almost felt audible of just like move to Knoxville. And the reason why I was so quick to think like God is at you is because that was not a thought that I would have ever had myself. So that's part of going back to like knowing yourself. And I knew that was not a desire of mine. I loved living in Florida. I loved my condo. I loved my job. I loved my church there, my friends. I felt like I would stay in Florida forever. Like it wasn't ever a thought in my mind to move. And so that was my first indication that it was possibly God, because I thought this is such a foreign thought in my mind right now. It's not something I would naturally think. So after praying about it and talking to my family about it and kind of going back to what I said before of I didn't feel like there were any barriers to doing it. And I felt like I just needed to step forward and say yes. And then if there was a reason why God was actually not asking me to do that, that he would close the door. Or, I think there are some times in life too where he may just be testing you, like Abraham in the Bible. And you just don't know if that's maybe that was the goal of just, are you willing, And so I just had to say yes. And everything just continued to fall into place for me to move after my lease was over. So I ended up moving to Knoxville and actually living with my sister and brother-in-law for a couple months. I only say a couple months because of the next part, but it was great. It was great to be back with my sister again. And I really thought, okay, God, this is the blessing. Like you just wanted me to be back with my family. I'd been away from my family for 5 years. And so my sister and I have always been pretty close. So it was just such a treat to be really close to her again. And then 5 months after I moved to Knoxville, I met a guy who's now my husband. So that was just not expected at all.
Yeah.
And then the irony behind all of it is that last year my sister and brother-in-law moved to Michigan. So it was not that I want to say they only moved for me to meet my husband, but it's just really how God works like that,
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing.